Another very important aspect in the Ethiopic Genesis and the Hebrew Genesis and the Genesis in the Bible that you'll find, especially with the patriarchs, Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, is that they all are connected with wells. Wells, like water wells. Wells are very, very important, and this is something that when we look even in today's world and the so-called anticipated or predicted or expected water wars, the wars concerning water, how water is almost as valuable as gold, if you think about it. We're living in a particular time right now. People can get bottled water, and there's faucet water, and there's water everywhere. But water is a very precious commodity, and as you know, if you've been following this series on Ethiopic Genesis, and we did like in the beginning, we was touching on water very much, because water is there in the beginning, and there's the waters above and the waters below, even the DendeRah, temple and the ceiling, you could say the constellation and the heaven, the portion of the heaven that it shows right there. You can see the waters above and the waters below. What Genesis also speaks about, because you have to remember that Moses, according to our Gnostic Coptic apostle Hawaria Paulos, he states that Moses was learned in all of the wisdom of the Egypts, wrongly translated Egyptians, but of the Egypts, and he was a man mighty in word and deed. So if we would overstand Moses' writing, especially the foundation, the law and order, speaking of Torah or the orit, we need to overstand it from the context or perspective, according to the context that was true or real, the true context of Moses, based on the initiation and the learning and the mastery of the Egyptian, the Kemit mythos or gnosis, the Gnostic, the wisdom, you know, of ancient Egypt. So this is very, very important, and it also simplifies it. Just from our own studies of it, we begin to recognize that now the picture really becomes logical, clear. We can see the past, we can see the present, and we can see the future through the proper context. Everything is context, because if you context. Without context, it's nonsense. Like if you're reading, you need reading comprehension. You know what I'm saying? You need to comprehend what you're reading. Your reading may be good, but do you understand what you are reading? Now, we're touching on this because this is kind of like the overflow to the teaching concerning the wells, because there are many wells of Genesis. There's wells that are mentioned in Genesis, and they have significant names, and they are also associated and connected with significant events, key events, significant events. For example, we have the first one, the BEER-LAHAI-ROI, the well of him that liveth and seeth me, according to Genesis chapter 16, verse 14, and Genesis 24:62, and Genesis 25:11. BEER-LAHAI-ROI, and that's connected with Agar. When Agar fled from her imabate, she went, and there's the whole BEER-LAHAI-ROI. Now, she was the Egyptian, right? Hagar or Agar. And the Roi or Roi, you understand, the Roi is connected with a raiy, or what you know from Egyptology as Ra. So that Roi name, which in the French is king, you understand, Roy, you understand, I think Roy in the French is king, like Rex. So you see that R-E, you know, that R-E-R-A, that R-O-I link. So you have to associate that right there, because the translation of BEER-LAHAI-ROI, the first significant well of Genesis, is translated as the well of him that liveth, LAHAI, ROI, and seeth me. Now, the second well that is mentioned is BEER-SHEBA, which is the well of the oath, or the well of the covenant, or the well of seven, the seven. So seven, Sheba becomes Sheva, becomes very, very important. BEER-SHEBA, BEER-SHEBA, according to Genesis 21 verses 25 to 33, Genesis 22 verse 19, and Genesis 26 verses 23 to 25, as well as Genesis 46 verses 1 to 5. Now, here, and we're in Genesis 26, speaking of Yisahak, the well digger, Yisahak, the well digger, and we find Esek, which means contention, Genesis 26 and 20, and Sitna, which means hatred. Sitna, and there's a whole interesting comparative research and analysis that Gerald Macy gives us of Sitna and the Egyptian Sut or Shait, according to the more correct pronunciation. When we confuse that, you think it's Sate, but Sate is female or woman, and then we have Shait, and then we have Shet to sell, and Sitna as in Satan and Satnael, so therefore the connection of hatred or enmity or opposition, or you could say the Egyptian devil or Sut. You understand? So we have Sitna, which means hatred, according to Genesis 26 and 21. Now, Esek and Sitna, or contention and hatred, were Yisahak's own attempts, was his own attempts at well digging. Afterward, he dwelt by the old wells of his father. There's a very important lesson there, that Isaac attempted to be the well digger, and his two attempts were Esek and Sitna. That was his two attempts at well digging, but afterward, Yisahak, our ancestor, chose to dwell by the old wells, the tried and true wells of his father. Then, fifthly, we have Rehoboth, and Rab is an interesting Ethiopic etymology to that as well. But Rehoboth means enlargement, according to Genesis 26 and 22. So we want to study up on these wells of Genesis and to consider the fact that in the Promised Land, one of the first acts after acquisition of land was wells. So wells are very important, and something that even has been overlooked even in some of the shashamene land grant and some of the other schemes that have gone on is water. Water is very, very much key. You understand? And if we would study orit and torah and recognize the law and order, we will also recognize for us in coming out and establishing ourselves in the Promised Land the things that we may have to do and how to learn from the examples of the past. So wells are very, very important, and the wells of Genesis once again have significant, very important key names, and they are associated with very important and key events. And we wanted to make a remark on the wells of Genesis, the water wells, or the beers or the BEER-LAHAI-ROI, BEER-SHEBA. We have Esek, contention, and the well of Sitna, hatred. And then we have Rehoboth. So we have about 5 different wells that have been noted for us here in the Schofield Study Bible. And we're going to take it up on the next level and get into a little bit more based on the Kemite mythos and some of the research of our brother Gerald Macy and some of the related works of Gerald Macy in regards to the well. A very important well is BEER-SHEBA. BEER-SHEBA is a very important well, and we might begin with BEER-SHEBA first, the well of the oath or the well of the covenant, because what's left out in most Christian, you could say, exegesis usually, especially the superficial, or just on the level, is that Sheba means oath, and Sheba means a covenant, but more importantly, Sheba is connected with the so-called old genetrix, you understand, or the old mother, you understand, because the earlier motherhood, and it's symbolic of the seven, the use of seven, what is seven significant of and seven key of as it concerns this particular well, beersheba, the well of the oath or the covenant of the seven. So stay tuned for that, and we look forward to bringing you more in due time. But for right now, salam tanat, einais eling.